Hey, what is going on, you guys? My name is Rayge and we are back today with a quick video in regards to all the Scourge activities this year, a quick recap, and as well the lessons learned of what we can take forward going into the new year here, now that we know that Apocalypse is coming up soon and now that we've wrapped up with all the legendary horsemen and their respective events. Now guys, one of the key challenges that we went through this year was going through, this is really ideally the first time we actually experience having to focus on specific teams in a given time frame, whether it be when Morgan Le Fay's Scourge was announced, saying the required teams was Dark Hunters and Web Warriors. This put everyone on a pivot because we've never had this timeline in regards to having these specific characters invested in this given time and making sure that they're ready. And I think the biggest thing was just being uncertain, right? Uncertain how high to bring these characters up, what were these Scourges all about. And that's why resource management was really key. It was a huge challenge for us just to, dictate in terms of how high should we bring them up? Do we even have the resources? And at the same time, with a lot of festivities going on, the monthly events and so forth. Another key challenge was just maintaining the fun aspect, despite the grind and the strategy, keeping up your spirit and energy, going through motion by motion. When we saw these events coming out, the intensity, and at the same time, we still want to enjoy this game, right? And I think that was definitely a mental battle as well for a lot of players out there, especially those that decided to take a break from the game or ultimately quit altogether. And really the biggest challenge overall, considering all these points, was we had to build basically 4 legendary horseman teams multiplied by 5 characters, so 20 characters that are in their respective saga, and as well 5+ required teams. And I put 5+ because with the last Death Scourge, we did actually need a minion team to go through those initial 2 nodes. So 1 required for each one if you were efficient, typically nodes 5 and 10. And then as well, this last one also needing minions. So the big battle there, you can just do the math quite easily. Just so many different combinations of characters and teams. And at the same time, we still have the events and other game modes to worry about, and that's not to say it's been quite a battle this year, and it's been exciting, don't get me wrong, competitive, but at the same time we've never seen a pace like this ever in the game, and that's really where ultimately the challenge lied. Now that said, guys, how free-to-play friendly was the Scourge? Was it reachable by any means from a character that's 100% free-to-play like myself? How did I do in terms of all my legendary horseman unlocks? That's what I'm willing to show you guys here in the next slide. So as you can see, again, I have a 100% free-to-play roster, so I love making these comparisons and really showing you guys how high I built my teams up. So let's quickly zoom in here and I'll show you right here. We got a total roster combat power 18.5 million. And as you can see, by scrolling down here, I actually have logged in days 1,090. So yeah, over just about 3 years, as you can see there. But more respectively, how about the totals that I have right now for all my different horseman teams? Now that we've actually got the red star payout respectively for Archangel, I can actually show you now my full total team power of each, right? The Darkhold team totaling 835. We got Gamma being second for 716. Unlimited X-Men, and as well the new Death Seed right there at 614, whom I'm currently bringing up right now for the Doom 3.4 raids and beyond. So you can see, guys, now that we have the official payout, even with a 100% free-to-play roster at 18.5 million, and keep in mind, I've had a lot of time in this game, so it gave me a huge advantage in terms of resources. I was able to actually compete pretty good in terms of what I achieved. Morgan Le Fay, fortunately, we've had many runnings of her Scourge event, so easily a 7-star there. We recently had Rogue's 3rd event, so you can see got the 7 there as well. With the War Scourge specifically hasn't been rerun yet, so I ended up getting a 5 red as well as 5 yellow, as you can see there. And I also ended up getting a 5 red and a 5 yellow on Archangel by upgrading through the Elite after he was after the Shard payout, of course. So overall, despite the events being run once, as a free-to-play player, I was able to achieve bare minimum at least a 5-star for each character. So I am on track to unlocking Apocalypse. And I think this information is very insightful to show you guys because this is from a free-to-play roster, right? I didn't spend any money into this game, but I did have to grind quite a bit for the Scourges, and generally was in the top, I would say, 5%, 10%, and that generally landed me where that 5 yellow is. So I mean, Overall, the payout was really, really good in my honest opinion, but that's not to say I had an easy time. I still had to go through and really dictate in terms of my Scourges. This made for some interesting videos, of course, just to kind of show you guys the walkthrough and strategy. But I gratefully enjoyed it, but that's not to say it was challenging, and definitely kept me on my toes, especially in trying to do the unlocks and trying to see how high I can push my Scourges respectively. That said, guys, overall, how did I find success? You know, let's take a look at that. Biggest thing for me was being patient. Don't invest in every single shiny team that's released. As you guys can see on the screenshot to the right, I actually grabbed the 3 respective teams that I didn't actually build at all into each of the Scourges. For the first one, we had Dark Hunters and Web Warriors. So I didn't even look at Dark Hunters because I just saw the synergy of the Web Warriors and the fact that they were actually needed for Doom raids, right? So for me, I just completely pivoted and focused on Web Warriors. And that investment right there potentially, you know, saved me huge dividends going down the line later on, especially since I didn't have to focus on 2 separate teams. Next up, we also had, you know, the option of using Inhumans as well as A-Force. I didn't even put my Inhumans in here because they're absolutely just terrible. The only one that's pretty decent is Black Bolt, and Yo-Yo is slightly higher just because of the pocket dimensions. But as you can see, my A-Force there, 275k. That's it. And then last but not least, the heroes as guardians that I did utilize for the War Scourge. You can see I do have Lady Thor there because she was pretty much the strongest out of this bunch, but still not that powerful when you compare it to all the other Scourge teams I just showed a couple slides ago. So you can see Heimdall I didn't bring up, Sif I didn't bring up, Wave 1 overall wasn't great. Black Widow was only high for me because I used her in Dark Mansion previously, but you can see a lot of these characters and teams I didn't need because although they were required, they weren't the best team, right? And that's why I'm saying with my point 1 there. Being patient, not investing in every team, really doing the research and just seeing, or even just waiting for content creators to release the videos, you would know at least which teams to invest in, and it's the right overall strategy. Number 2, it's quality over quantity, guys. We always have to focus on the high impact, high value characters first. So even when you have the full Scourge teams unlocked, such as Morgan Le Fay with her respective Darkhold, I didn't bring up every character up at the same time. I only invested in Morgan Le Fay and then later on Agatha Harkness because I saw that their abilities were just so well utilized, they can already be run in other game modes outside of what their intended meta is, right? So for sure, that actually allowed me to be able to push my roster even higher, and having those high impact characters first allows you to be able to already translate their skills and their success into other game modes, and that's exactly what you want. Just because you have the Darkhold team doesn't mean you should invest in every single character at the same time. I think that's part of the challenge too. Players finding that battle, and then at the same time it's gonna deplete their materials, and that ultimately would translate later on with these festivities and more events coming out. Really focusing on those high value characters and high impact first is gonna allow you to have success and translate it to the other aspects of your game. And then lastly, guys, this is a really big reminder for those of you newer to the game and those of you still in the end game. Actually, Apocalypse is for the end game. So I don't know where this misconception came out, where all these Scourge events started coming out and people that started the game wanted to unlock the Legendary Horseman. That's not to say it was impossible. I also have a new account as well, but I'm just going ahead and making sure I hit the minimum 100k points so that way I can get the 40 shards. But we have to keep in mind, guys, the big picture. Apocalypse is for the end game players. That's why, all my materials and resources were ready to go, because, I knew something big was going to happen in 2022 when they kind of, gave us a hint that Apocalypse was coming. Other game modes still matter, though, at the end of the day, especially those of you that are newer and watching this video. Raids, Arena, even Cosmic Crucible now, they're all very, very important aspects of the game because they still reward you generous materials that allow you to thrive and progress even further. More specifically, the raids, I think value-wise, they give out the most materials out of every game mode. Arena is important for the power cores, and now with new character shards being available via the Cosmic Crucible store, Cosmic Crucible is gaining traction just for that, having that feature, right? Understanding this, guys, and resource management over the quality characters is really going to translate to success for these Scourge events, especially knowing that at the end of the day, there are certain ways that we can more efficiently play these battles and challenges. So takeaways, guys. Although these teams were forced upon us, we gained meta teams in Arena, Cosmic Crucible, especially the Doom Race for mutants, and now the War, especially with the Gamma team. We have to remember that although it wasn't our intention to want to build these teams up right away, we gained very, very powerful meta teams in each of these 4 categories. And guess what? They're all going to be utilized now in the Unlock Apocalypse. So it's really good value. I mean, it was not ideal to be forcing our materials and gear into these teams against the timeline that we want. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of value, especially if we're going to be unlocking this powerful character in Apocalypse. We have to also remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Focus on what's best for your current progression, guys. It doesn't make sense to build a legendary horseman team when you just start the game. Absolutely not. When you start the game, the most important thing is going through the campaigns, farming as many nodes as you can, and gaining EXP. Even if you have access to a sexy character, you know, like Morgan Le Fay right away, yeah, she's going to add a lot of value from the start to beginning, but at the end of the day, that's not going to further your progression. You have to still get through the campaign chapters as you level up slowly and get through all the nodes using those different combinations of teams. Morgan Le Fay can only help you in certain game modes, but especially in the early game, you have to focus on progression and accumulating EXP, not powerful characters. Next up, knowledge is power. Newer players and those in the mid game can now reap the efficiencies of past errors made from previous players. We have tons and tons of content right now on YouTube, Reddit, so forth. We know what works and what doesn't work. And that's not to say that you can't play the way that you want to play, but there are more efficient ways to utilize, right? Especially now that we know which saga teams are required for Apocalypse, which characters are required, and as well, ultimately, which teams are best utilized in the Scourges. It would be foolish not to take advantage of that. For instance, you know, you're going to have a much easier time using Young Avengers trying to unlock Rogue as opposed to A-Force and Humans. It just really wouldn't make sense for you to build up a really strong team that doesn't provide a lot of value aside from the Young Avengers, especially with them being used in so many game modes, including the unlock of a very powerful legendary horseman and rogue. And guys, last but not least, resource management is ultimately king, is what we learned. You know, training materials, gold, ISO 8 green, especially when you're bringing up new teams, we got to be careful with the gear management. You know, for myself being free to play, I have to be extremely careful who I invest in, and that's why I'm always very cautious. But when I see a new team coming out, you know, the big question for me is, you know, do I need this team right now? Does it make sense for me to build them up if this is a game mode I don't care about? And that's exactly what I kind of applied my logic here. You know, when I'm looking at these previous teams, they're still very, very weak. You know, and I have no shame in that because these materials that I could have pumped into these teams and characters could have went elsewhere, right? And that's exactly why I didn't. This furthered my progression further, ultimately landing me these powerful legendary horseman teams. So at the end of the day, guys, we have to remember it is a resource management game. Was the Scourges this year free to play friendly? I think it was ultimately based on the success, but that's not to say it wasn't challenging. It all depends at the end of the day where you were in the end game and how effectively you manage resources. I'm an extreme example because I am 100% free to play, but I know that, you know, those of you that do spend, there's nothing wrong with that. Just at the end of the day, remember, there are better ways to more efficiently maximize your progression. And that's based on these takeaways here, right? At the end of the day, understanding that this was a game mode that's meant for end game players, and it really tested our might. And we're going to probably see a lot more challenges in the new year. I'm looking forward to it, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below if you agree or disagree. But I think, honestly, it was a really good year. It's just the first time that we ever experienced this feeling of being forced to, you know, funnel resources into set teams. But it could be something that they repeat in the future. So who knows, guys? I look forward to every opportunity, though, because we always do have the community and the collaboration that I look forward to. So thank you as always, you guys. Do appreciate you checking my videos, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.